Hello, everybody. Chuck Todd here. And before we kick off Season 2 of Meet the Press Reports, we got one more of our favorite episodes from Season 1 for you. In some ways, consider it a preview episode of a topic we're going to tackle in Season 2, Season 3, and beyond. It's on what arguably is the most important topic we deal with in politics today, and that is the shifting electoral landscape, essentially the battle for power. It's something we have to continue to come back to, whether it's the changes in voting laws, the changes in actuary tables, changes in migration patterns. All of it matters. There are different angles we're going to take, but this will give you a taste of how we're looking at it. I hope you enjoy it, and we'll see you soon. Hello there, I am Chuck Todd, and welcome to Meet the Press Reports, our deep dive extension of our Meet the Press franchise, and welcome to life after the 2020 presidential election. The dust is settling, I promise, and barring any faithless electors, this is the electoral map that will go into the history books. It is a victory with 306 electoral votes for Joe Biden. That's a map that will live in infamy. Compare that to 2016's map of pledged electors. Donald Trump also won 306 electoral votes, but the states of Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and one of Nebraska's congressional districts went the other way. Those were the flips. So, folks, if there's one thing we know about our elections, there is no one way to win a presidential race, even if you end up with back-to-back elections with the same electoral vote spreads. It's a constantly changing electorate, which is part of our DNA. You'd have to go back to George Washington's time in office to find 2 consecutive elections where not a single state flipped from blue to red or red to blue. So how and why did this electorate change in 2020? Where are we headed as a country into 2024 and beyond? The answer is not only in the states that flipped, but more importantly, at the county and district levels across the country, in the cities, suburbs, exurbs, and rural America, where individuals are organizing themselves into clusters of extremely like-minded voters.
Scranton, when you're a kid, no matter how long you live here, climbs into your heart and it occupies you.
We knew in advance of the vote that Pennsylvania and the industrial Midwest would play a key role in pushing Biden or Trump over the 270 vote threshold.
You know, before the plague came in, I had it made. I wasn't coming to Erie. I mean, I have to be honest. There's no way I was coming. Pennsylvania,
along with Michigan, Wisconsin, and even Ohio, have been on the list of competitive states for years.
We love campaigning in your state. Ohio's a wonderful place.
But the part of the map that's new, the part of the map that could show us how America is changing into the future, is further south, in the Sun Belt. That's Texas, Arizona, and Georgia.
There aren't a lot of pundits who would have guessed 4 years ago that the Democratic candidate for president in 2020 would be campaigning in Georgia on the final week of the election.
This shift should not be a surprise. The electoral map changes a little bit every year. And if you look all the way back to 1952, you can see that the map has gone through a number of changes. But how and why does it happen? In the middle of the 20th century, the Democrats' base of power was the Solid South. In the 1950s, both parties started aggressively courting black voters. But the Democrats won the day by pushing for groundbreaking voting rights legislation.
If we pass, as we must pass, civil rights legislation. There are bills up in Congress today that I think have some chance.
While they gained in big cities and in African-American communities, Democrats lost votes in the South. Republicans responded by pressing that advantage, creating a block of relatively reliable states.
And in the field of civil rights, I think the Republican Party, as I have indicated, should under no circumstances try to go as far as the Johnson administration will try to demagogue and go.
Of course, race continues to play a major role in how elections are fought. According to Pew Research, the share of eligible non-Hispanic white voters declined in all 50 states between 2000 and 2018. During that same period, the share of Hispanic voters grew in every state, with major growth across the Southwest.
What did Donald Trump get? He got 57% of the white vote, which was just in line with what he got in 2016. What did George Bush get? He got 57% of the white vote. What did Ronald Reagan got? He got 59% of the white vote. What's changing are the demographics. Right. 57% of the white vote in 84 was a Ronald Reagan landslide.
Class is another part of the story. Republicans have traditionally relied on wealthier voters. That's part of the reason they're always talking about tax cuts and free trade. Meanwhile, Democrats used to be the party of labor. Today, it's still an important part of their coalition. But because of culture and economics, labor is shifting away, at least rank-and-file labor union members. President Clinton tried to pick up some of those pro-business voters from the Republican Party. And in 1993, he signed the first major American free trade agreement, NAFTA. Labor leaders saw it as a betrayal, but at the time, they couldn't easily switch to the GOP.
And I guarantee in November, my union and many other unions that feel as I do, we're going to make sure we get even at the polls.
25 years later, Donald Trump campaigned against NAFTA, turning a long-festering complaint of the working class into a wedge issue to drive those voters into his camp.
NAFTA has done more to destroy your community than any other single act.
So voter groups move around because of issues and because of demographics. But we're talking about maps, and it is geography, who lives where, that really makes the maps move. Look at the Electoral College results in 2004. New Mexico and Oregon are battlegrounds, and George W. Bush won Colorado by 4 points and Virginia by more than 8 points. But Colorado's demographics were shifting as the suburbs around Denver grew and became more affluent and diverse. At the same time, wealthier voters, especially in the suburbs, were shifting left politically. In 2008, Democrats targeted the state. They held their national convention in Denver, helping improve Democratic voter turnout for the general election. And today, Colorado is fairly reliably blue in presidential races. In 2020, President Trump won rural counties by big numbers. But traditional Republican strongholds like the suburbs around Atlanta have flipped. Take Cobb County. In 2012, Mitt Romney beat Barack Obama by 12 points. In this year's election, the numbers are flipped, with Biden beating Trump by 14 points.
So joining me now is one of the foremost experts on the ever-changing American electorate. It's Dante Cini. He is the director of the American Communities Project, a reporter with both the Wall Street Journal and for us right here at NBC News. He also works for George Washington University. Dante, always good. You're my partner in all of our data downloads here. We do so much together. And I want to start with the suburban shift, because I know some people are going to sit there and say we've been looking at this for the last couple of cycles. I would argue that we've actually seen this pattern of the suburban shift from red to blue. It started with Bill Clinton in 1992 in the states of New Jersey and Illinois. And it's been continuing sort of this slow movement as suburban populations grow in a specific state. We saw it in Colorado and Virginia, as we showed you in the piece. Let me bring up the state of Georgia, Gwinnett and Cobb counties. And I'm just going to show you from 2012 to today, 27-point swings in Gwinnett, 27-point swing in Cobb from 2012 to today. And Georgia, Dante, is just the latest in what's been a 28-year-long shift of the suburbs from the Republicans to the Democrats. It's just been moving. First it was the Northeast, then the Midwest, then the Southwest, Mid-Atlantic, and now it's hitting the South.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. When we were coming into Election Day this year, we were all talking a little bit about how we thought Biden might actually have a better chance in Georgia than he did in Florida, right? Which was a surprise because Florida is the perpetual battleground. And how would Biden actually have a better chance in a state like Georgia? And the reason is Atlanta and the Atlanta metro area, if you look at it growing over time, it's a blob. I mean, the suburban area stretches out and out and out. And we finally got to a point this year where that was enough. That tipped it. I would note, though, even more interesting, Cobb and Gwinnett, those are big shifts and shifts to Democratic vote. Biden wins there. But you go to the next ring out, you look at Cherokee County, Paulding County. These are kind of more urban areas. Trump wins them. He wins them again. He wins them convincingly, but he loses margin. And to me, that is one of the big findings in this election. Is it's not just that these big close-in suburbs became Democratic. It's that the more far-flung suburbs really started to become the Republican margin shrank.
So basically what you're saying is that the blue suburbs are bleeding into the exurbs right now. And I guess the question is, Is it going to continue, or do Republicans stop it?
Well, I think for them to stop it, they've got to, the party has to figure out what it is, right? I think both parties are at this point where they're trying to figure out what they are exactly. And they don't know yet. I do think if the Republican Party continues down this path they're on towards a kind of a Trump vision of the Republican Party, I don't know if that works for them. I don't think these suburban areas, look, we've talked a lot about how Republicans had a better night than they hoped in the House. They actually won seats in the House, and that was surprising to them. Well, I think one of the real reasons we're going to find we get into the results and we take this apart is that, moderate Republicans voted for Joe Biden and then voted for a Republican in the House. They're not Democrats yet, but they don't like the direction that Trump has taken their party.
Right. There seems to be, though, if the Democratic vote is growing inside out, right, from the inner cities to the inner suburbs to the Republican vote does look like it's growing from the outside in. I want to put up for you some rural gains for Republicans in the state of North Carolina. Essentially a red shift. Scotland County, Hertford County, Northampton County, Edgecombe County. One of them was an actual flip here. Scotland County, Clinton County in 2016 became a narrow Trump county, a 9-point swing there. These other counties were places where Biden won them, but his margins were lower than Hillary Clinton's there. Those are the next three counties down. So it does, this is more of a seesaw approach, right? As one goes up, numbers are going down somewhere and vice versa.
Yeah, I mean, the argument is if the Republicans have a suburban problem, and it really does look like the Republicans have a suburban problem, the Democrats have a rural problem. These counties that we're talking about, Scotland, Edgecombe, these are the large black populations, large African-American populations, but also lots of rural whites.
Yeah.
We kind of need to take the vote apart and figure out, was it the African-American vote that shifted, or was it the rural white vote that just came out sort of strongly for Trump? But regardless, what we're seeing in a rural county, in these rural counties, is Trump doing better.
Look, I have a theory that this isn't a race issue. It is a place issue, to borrow a line from our friends at NPR, because while you and I are trying to figure out what happened to the rural black vote in North Carolina, that Barack Obama won convincingly and won those counties, Hillary Clinton held some of them. What happened to him? And then I want to bring up to you the Rio Grande Valley. And then the open question is, do Democrats have a rural Latino problem too? The Rio Grande Valley, these are Hispanic counties, but they're rural. Starr County, Hidalgo, Cameron, Maverick. These are all places. Look at these major changes. Starr County, a 55-point swing, a 23-point swing in favor of the Republicans in Hidalgo. We want to know why Democrats didn't carry Texas, even though they came with just a hair over 5 points. Here's your answer. Right, Dante?
Yeah, well, it sure didn't help them. We'll say that much. I mean, the thing that's most interesting to me about those rural Hispanic counties along the border in particular is you think about what makes the Republican vote, the rural vote Republican. And you go to like Appalachian communities. They're remote, they're isolated, they're rural, they're fairly, there's a lot of homogeneity. They're all white. You go to these rural communities along the border, it's the same thing. There's a lot of homogeneity. It's Hispanic, but it's homogeneity. It's small town, it's rural, it's remote. And I think there's, in the same kind of feeling, there's distrust of urban areas in these places, distrust of big cities. So there's a cultural conservatism that may be helping Republicans, or at least help Trump. What it means after Trump, we're going to have to wait and see. But if you're a Republican and you're looking at this election trying to find some positives, this is a big positive for you down along that Rio Grande border. And maybe it is the rural vote, Hispanic vote, starting to look more at the rural vote overall.
And is this, is this a reminder that we may be two coalitions? I mean, the shift of the suburbs feels like it's on education. Sort of the split is on education lines. How much education did you attain? Because you see the same thing. Is there going to be a working class coalition that a Republican not named Trump could be more effective at putting together, because his racial rhetoric towards both Latinos and African Americans is so harsh? Imagine a Republican that sort of put together a rural coalition of working class folks.
Yeah, I think that's the Republican hope right now, that this is the future of the party. We can become the working class party of all races, all ethnicities. And like you say, that we're going to have to find out if that's what happens after Trump, because as we say this, you've got the Trump administration, the Trump campaign trying to disenfranchise black voters in Detroit. So they're for this to really work for them, they're going to have to find a way to bridge this gap that the Republican Party has reaching out to minority voters. And can they do that after Donald Trump? That's a really good question. You're right. It may just be finding the right candidate, but that's not necessarily going to be an easy candidate to find.
And no party has figured out how to be both the party of business and the party of working people. So you're going to have to give up your funding source from the business world if the Republicans pursue that strategy. Dante Cini, an incredible year to go through this with you. Great to have you as a partner. I look forward to the next 4 years with you.
It's going to be interesting, if nothing else.
That's for sure. Thank you, sir. So you just saw how our electorate is changing on the county level. Now let's take a look at what that change means for the battleground maps going forward. You know the saying, as Ohio goes, so goes the nation. Well, not anymore. For the first time since 1960, the winner of Ohio did not win the White House. And it wasn't even close. Donald Trump carried Ohio by 8 points. You might be able to take Ohio off the battleground map in 2024. And it's been a long time since it hasn't been on the battleground map. Going back to the late 19th century, the road to the White House has been through the Midwest. That may also be a thing of the past. Even with his flips in Michigan and Wisconsin, Joe Biden won just 4 states in the traditional Midwest, plus that Omaha congressional district. That is tied for the fewest states won in the Midwest by a victorious Democratic presidential candidate since 1892. So what does the battleground map look like going forward? Well, joining me now are 2 people that will be living this battleground map with me. Charlie Cook, editor and publisher of the Cook Political Report, and Amy Walter, the Cook Political Report's national editor. So one of the things I think we wanted to present here, Charlie, is that while the battleground map may feel like it never changes, it actually does change quite a bit. In some ways, it's always a little bit every cycle. So it sort of takes a decade at a time to see these changes. I feel like we're in the midst of a political realignment right now with our battleground map. And so things are changing. We just hit the stop button in our remote on November 3rd.
No, I think that's right, Chuck. And that, trends aren't straight lines. They tend to be kind of jagged. They zigzag. And you remember 4 years ago, Hillary Clinton was spending time in Arizona and Georgia and a lot of time in North Carolina, and they just weren't right yet. Well, now they're getting right. And you said, Democrats were tempted. They thought maybe Texas would be kind of an opportunity this time. Not this time, but probably in 4 years. But we are seeing an incredible realignment demographically and geographically.
So, Amy Walter, I'm going to put up here. Here's the map. These are the 8 states there were 8 states decided by 5 points or less this cycle. So we're going to start that off as our battleground map. It is Arizona, Florida, Georgia, Michigan, Nevada, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. And here's what I like to remind people about this map this year is let's look at it geographically. From Nevada in the west to North Carolina in the east, our battleground map now leans to the Sun Belt. 5 in the Sun Belt, 3 in the Midwest. Is that an accident?
I don't think it's an accident. It's where the growth is going in this country. And we also know that the Midwest is continuing not only to lose population, but they're going to lose congressional seats in the next round of redistricting. So as the country shifts, not just in terms of the kinds of people that are moving into the country, but people who are moving within the country, and the kinds of people that are moving into the suburbs. Chuck, to me, the most interesting thing that's happened really just in these last 10 years or so is that suburbs used to be much more regionally defined, right? There was a southern suburb which was different from a Midwestern suburb, which was different from a New England suburb. And now if you go in the Dallas suburbs or if you go into the Atlanta suburbs or the Denver suburbs, you're getting kind of the same vote. Politically, it looks very similar. And quite frankly, there's some homogeneity there too in the kinds of stores and the kinds of people that are attracted to living there. And retailers found this, figured this out some time ago, and now candidates are too.
You know, you bring up a great point. You know, Charlie, I remember growing up, it would be a big deal if my grandfather brought Coors beer back from the other side of the Rockies. And he brought it. It was like, oh, my God, regional, right? We don't have, you know, it's funny. A lot of us like to say all politics is national now, but all culture is national, right? And the lack of a regional culture, I think, has nationalized everything. So rural communities in Florida have a lot more in common with rural communities in Pennsylvania than they do. Shoot, I'll just take the rural parts of near Pensacola have more in common with rural communities in Michigan than they do with the folks that live in the city of Pensacola. And this is a smaller city that I'm describing, Charlie.
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly right. And what we're seeing, we tend to think of states or areas as going, or groups going to the left or going to the right. But a lot of times, in some cases, the suburbs, as Amy was saying, they're reverting to the mean. They're heading towards, they're becoming more nationalized, and they're losing their distinctive, Southern flavor or that sort of thing. And quite frankly, I think some of the movement we saw with Latinos voters it was working class Latino voters who were behaving like working class whites, blue collar whites had been behaving, and drifting a little bit away from Democrats. But no, you're absolutely right. But it is, the suburbs are moving to the middle and behaving more in a more of a national fashion. But small town rural Democrats used to be competitive there. I mean, they used to do very, very well there. Yeah. But look at Colin Peterson. He got 40% of the vote. My gosh, this guy was Mr. Agriculture, and he got clobbered.
Yeah.
Well, again, all politics is national. Doesn't matter what you do for me locally. Where are you on some of these national issues? Amy, you brought up redistricting. And yes, we're going to show you our map and show you these electoral votes. Let me put up our 8 states again, and people can see who's losing and who's gaining. And as you can see, all of the Michigan and Pennsylvania lose. Arizona, Colorado, North Carolina, Florida, Texas gain, Ohio. And it's interesting, we split up among blue states. Biden will net zero as far as redistricting is concerned. But in the red states, basically the red numbers net 5. So you will see a 10 electoral vote swing if all things stay the same 4 years from now.
Right. And that's why Texas, you brought that up before, Chuck, but that becomes really the fascinating place to watch for these next few years. Look, going into this election, it did look as if those suburbs, not just the inner suburbs, but as you and Dante were talking about, the ones that sort of bleed out into the exurbs, that they were going to be really difficult for Trump and Republicans to hold on to. But they managed to do that. Now, they still can't. I think they've lost those inner suburbs in and around Dallas and Harris County around Houston.
Right.
But the other ones where all this growth is around Austin, San Antonio, Houston, and Dallas, out into Plano, north of Dallas, those still have more of a Republican flair. I do think that there is sort of a regional piece on this. You're getting white voters, more white voters who are evangelical, who are more conservative. And so I think that's still kind of a push there for Democrats. And then the other thing, as you well know, Chuck, man, is this an expensive place? I mean, this isn't just like deciding to jump into
thought Florida
Wisconsin.
was hard. Yeah, you think Florida's hard. Wait till you get a load of Texas and its, I think, 28 media markets.
For a week of TV. Yeah.
Very quickly, Charlie, is this the last year that labor union heads uniformly go with the Democrats? Because the rank and file is almost uniformly now lean Trump.
Well, and particularly when you divide up labor and you talk about, building construction trades, talking with leaders of those unions, boy, they are, they're dancing. I mean, they got half of their members were voting for Trump. And it was, so you really have to segment out labor and say which part of labor. Are you talking about manufacturing? Are you talking about building construction trades? Are you talking about government employee service? They're all very, very different. But I think you're right. This will be the last time.
Yeah, that's for sure. Just one of the things that are changing. Charlie Cook, Amy Walter, thank you both. One thing about our jobs, right? The maps keep changing, and it keeps our jobs interesting. So I appreciate both of you. And that is all for Meet the Press Reports. Thanks for being with us. I'll see you Sunday on Meet the Press.
the True Crime Original. Every Friday, you'll find a mystery to be solved, a story to be told, and justice to be served. Every Friday, an all-new Dateline with a twist. The True Crime Original. Every Friday at 9/8 Central, only on NBC.